Hi everyone, my name is Junon. I have a health science background, and I'm the author of the book Truth and Empathy: How to Find Your Soulmate. And I'll put a link to the book below. This video is about the romantic compatibility between INFPs and ENTJs. I think that most people have themselves the question, who's the best match romantic with another person, especially long term, based on certain characteristics. And I think that MBTI personality types is a good starting point because it looks at a number of aspects or personality traits of a person. So let's look at what INFPs and ENTJs have in common. Obviously, they're both intuitives, which means that when they're gathering information, it's more like a download than them gathering data and then see a pattern and be able to predict what's going to happen in the future. So they'll tell you that they know something is true or not, and they can't even explain how they got to the answer. So that is something is typical of intuitives. The other point is that the ENTJ, although officially an extrovert, but because this person type is an intuitive, they will behave more like an introvert. Because when it comes to either person being an introvert extrovert, has to do with how they get recharged, and if their energy is lower, the same, or higher than people around them. And being an intuitive means that the ENTJ has higher energy than most people. So you'll see that this person type will need time alone to recharge. Same thing with the INFP, but in this case is that they are also an introvert. So being an intuitive feeler who's also an introvert, they will need even more time alone to be energized. So they will understand that about each other. But obviously, this couple would face a number of challenges. The first one is that one is a thinker, the ENTJ, and the other one is that obviously the INFP is a feeler. So when they're making decision, the ENTJ will use more logic, whereas the INFP is about ethics and morals. So in other words, they will often not come to the same conclusion. And the ENTJ is a very left brain dominant. So in the most left brain dominant of all the personality types. So they have extroverted thinking as its first function. So these are people who are very practical, logical, and really when you look at in their relationship, because it is the masculine and orderly, they are about effectiveness. So does it work? So they're not so much concerned about ethics and morals and so forth. Is that okay? Does whatever I'm doing yields the result that I want? That's what they want, and they're very much goal oriented. Whereas the INFP, because this personality type has extrovert thinking as its fourth function, it's actually when they're weakest, they're not about that because their first function is introverted feeling. So among even the feelers, the people are very much about their own ethics, own morals. So they're all about authenticity. So they're not so much interested in whether or not something works or not, or even if it affects others, as much as are they more aligned with their own ethics, own morals. That's what they're really ultimately about. So they will probably clash on that level. And interesting enough is that feelers tend to do better in relationship compared to thinkers because they are people oriented, whereas the thinkers are object oriented. So it's the abstraction of the concrete, as in the case of the ENTJ, they are intuitive thinkers. So you'll see that interesting enough is that thinkers tend to be more attracted to feelers than the other way around. So like feelers will be more accommodating, and the thinker will not even realize that there are issues in the relationship. So that will be I think a hurdle that you'll have to face, and maybe trying to find a solution to that. So you'll see that in terms of what they're interested in terms of even like subject of conversation, because the ENTJ is very left brain dominant, so they tend to be really good in math and science, and also they tend to have pretty high IQs, just like the INTJ. So you'll see that these are people who like intellectual stimulation, and they also are not shy away from like debates or confrontation. By contrast, the INFP is not fond of confrontation or even in terms of trying to debate. So they prefer harmony compared to the ENTJ. So therefore, this couple is a very poor match. So I would not encourage people who are INFPs and who are ENTJs to actually become a couple, because long term is going to be difficult. Because the issue is, when it comes to relationships, it has to do, it's not that you might have an issue short term with a person, is that, okay, can you build a life? Can you see yourself almost on a daily basis having these conflicts? So in other words, although they are both intuitives, these are people who like abstract thought, but they're not focused on the same thing. One has to do with the human element, being an INFP. The other one has to do with the abstract of the concrete. So they are object oriented, and also in terms of their organizational style. One is the spontaneous type, so it's a perceiver. The other one is a judger. So ENTJs very much like order. They like to to finish their thing, so they're very good with following through. And it's not the case with the INFP. And the INFP also tends to have issues with time management. So in other words, they're the type of people who might be late often, or even in terms of like not be able to really perceive time, because it's something that intuitive feelers have in terms of their challenge, is because their brains are they're right brain dominant, and also they have slow brain waves, then they don't perceive time the same way as many other personality types. So I think that because of all these challenges, this is not a good match. Now, to summarize, I think this is a very poor match, because one is a feeler, the other one is a thinker, one is a perceiver, the other one's a judger, one is very much about their own ethics and morals when they make decisions, the other one's about logic and practicality. One, in terms of their relationship style, is the feminine and spontaneous, the other one is a masculine and organized. So all this to say is that I think long term they will really get on each other's nerves. So let me know if you agree or disagree with this compatibility analysis by commenting below. If you like this video, if you learned something, please click on the like button, subscribe to my channel. Remember to click on the notification bell to be notified of the videos that I'm going to be making in the future. And we will talk soon.